My name is Natalie Mercer. I'm 29 years old and I work as a probate attorney in Chicago. Until one single phone call shattered my reality, I thought I understood exactly how deception worked. I spent years handling wills, inheritance disputes, guardianship paperwork, and family estates. I believed I could spot fraud immediately because I dealt with it every day in courtrooms and conference rooms. I was wrong. The call came on a rainy Wednesday evening in April of 2026 while I was sitting in my office downtown, buried beneath a mountain of client files. I remember the exact time because I glanced at the clock right before answering. 4:52 p.m. An unfamiliar Indiana number flashed across my screen. Normally, I ignored unknown calls during work hours, but something made me pick up. "This is Natalie Mercer." The woman on the other end sounded tense, like someone holding herself together by force. "Ms. Mercer, this is Principal Elaine Porter from Maplewood Academy in Indianapolis." I straightened in my chair. "Okay."
"We have an urgent situation involving your daughter, Lily."
For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard her. "My what?"
"Your daughter, Lily Mercer."
I laughed nervously because the statement was so absurd it didn't even register as threatening at first. "I think you've got the wrong person. I don't have children." Silence filled the line. Then the principal spoke again, slower this time.
"Ms. Mercer, your mother has failed to pick Lily up from school for nearly 3 hours. We've attempted to contact her repeatedly. According to our records, you are Lily's legal guardian and primary custodial parent. If someone doesn't arrive soon, we are legally obligated to contact Child Services and local authorities."
The blood drained from my face. "My mother?" I whispered.
"Yes. Your mother, Linda Mercer, has picked Lily up from school almost every day for the past 4 years."
I gripped the edge of my desk so hard my fingers hurt. "There's been some kind of mistake." Her voice sharpened immediately. "Your mother called earlier today in an extremely distressed state. She claimed you were refusing to care for your child and abandoning your parental responsibilities. Frankly, Ms. Mercer, we're deeply concerned." I stood so quickly my chair rolled backward into the wall. "I'll be there." The drive from Chicago to Indianapolis felt endless, even though traffic was surprisingly light. I called my mother 7 times before I even crossed the state line. Every call went straight to voicemail. At first, I left messages. By the 5th attempt, I stopped bothering. She was avoiding me. And deep down, I already knew this somehow involved one of her lies. My mother had always manipulated people. She controlled conversations the same way a chess player controlled pieces. Growing up, she rewrote history constantly. If she hurt someone, she became the victim. If she lied, she claimed it was for protection. If she destroyed something, she blamed someone else for making her do it. But this was beyond anything I could imagine. The entire drive, my mind raced through possibilities. Identity theft, forgery, a scam. Maybe my mother had signed my name onto something. Maybe she'd used my information illegally. But none of it explained the child. Who was Lily? I had never met a Lily in my life. By the time I arrived at Maplewood Academy, the sun had already disappeared behind dark clouds. The school sat in a wealthy suburban neighborhood north of Indianapolis, all polished brick walls and expensive landscaping, the kind of private academy that charged more tuition than some colleges. The parking lot was nearly empty. Inside, the hallways were silent. That eerie, after-hours silence made the entire building feel abandoned. I followed signs toward the main office, and through the glass doors, I saw a small girl sitting beside the receptionist desk. She looked about 5 years old. Curly blonde hair, pink sneakers, tiny denim jacket. She held a sparkly backpack against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her calm. The second I walked inside, the older woman behind the desk stood up immediately. "Ms. Mercer?" "Yes, I'm Elaine Porter." Another woman standing nearby gave me a nervous smile before quickly looking away. Then the little girl looked up at me. Her eyes were bright green and swollen from crying. She stared at me carefully for several long seconds before speaking in a tiny voice. Are you Mommy Natalie? My heart nearly stopped. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was horribly wrong. I looked at the principal. I don't understand what's happening. She motioned toward her office. Please come with me. I followed her into a cramped office filled with filing cabinets and stacks of paperwork. She closed the door behind us. Ms. Mercer, she said carefully, this child has been waiting here since 3:20 this afternoon. Your mother never arrived. We've been unable to contact her. I've never seen that child before tonight. Her expression shifted instantly from frustration to confusion. What? I'm serious, I said. I have never enrolled a child here. I've never adopted anyone. I don't have a daughter. Principal Porter stared at me for several seconds before opening a filing cabinet. She pulled out a thick folder labeled Lily Mercer, Enrollment Records. Then she placed it on the desk between us. Your name is on every document. She opened the folder. The first page was an emergency contact form dated September 2021. Student name, Lily Grace Mercer. Guardian, Natalie Mercer. Address, my old apartment in Chicago. Phone number, mine. I stopped breathing. Everything was accurate, except the signature. At first glance, it looked identical to mine, but I knew immediately it was fake. The slant was slightly wrong, the pressure uneven, the loops too tight. Someone had practiced copying my handwriting. A cold chill moved through my entire body. This isn't my signature. Principal Porter looked alarmed. What are you saying? I'm saying somebody forged legal documents using my identity. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos until I found what I needed. A time-stamped image from a legal conference in San Diego during the exact week those forms had supposedly been signed. I was in California, I said. I can prove it. Her face turned pale. Then she slowly sat down. Your mother has represented herself as Lily's grandmother for years. Of course she had. I suddenly felt sick. My mother had built an entire fake life around this child. But why? I flipped through the folder faster. School authorizations, medical consent forms, permission slips. Every single page carried forged versions of my signature. Then I found the document that made my stomach twist. Guardianship authorization. It stated that I, Natalie Mercer, had accepted legal custody of Lily Grace Mercer following voluntary surrender of parental rights by the biological mother. There was even a notarization stamp attached. I stared at it in disbelief. Whoever created this had gone to extraordinary lengths. My mother hadn't told a simple lie. She'd built an entire false legal reality. I looked up slowly. Has my mother been the only person caring for Lily? Yes. And no one questioned it? She told us you worked constantly in Chicago and relied on her to help raise Lily. That sounded exactly like my mother. A believable lie wrapped around enough truth to feel real. The principal rubbed her forehead anxiously. If what you're saying is true, then this situation is far more serious than we realized. I looked through the office window at the little girl sitting alone outside. She looked exhausted, scared, confused, and none of this was her fault. Who else is authorized to pick her up? No one besides you and your mother. I closed my eyes briefly. If I walked away, Child Services would take her immediately. My mother knew that. She had planned this. Somehow she wanted me involved. But I still didn't understand why. Finally, I opened my eyes. I'll take her tonight. The principal visibly relaxed. Thank you. She printed temporary release paperwork, and for the first time that evening, I signed my real signature in front of witnesses. Then I walked back into the main office. The little girl stood the moment she saw me. Hi, I said softly. I'm Natalie. She nodded slowly. Grandma said you're my mommy, but you work too much to visit. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I crouched down carefully in front of her. Well, we're going to figure some things out tonight, okay? She reached for my hand immediately, like she trusted me already. That scared me more than anything else. As we walked toward the parking lot, I noticed the worn backpack she carried. A faded rainbow patch covered one corner. Something about it caught my attention. "Can I see your backpack for a second?" She handed it over. Inside was a stitched fabric label, Lily M. Mercer. Emergency contact, Linda Mercer. Only my mother's number, not mine. If I was supposedly her guardian, why wasn't my information there? I snapped a photo of the label instinctively. Evidence. I didn't know exactly what I was proving yet, but every instinct I had told me this situation was criminal. By the time we reached my car, the rain had started again. I opened the back door and froze. I didn't even own a child seat, because I wasn't a parent. The realization made my chest tighten. "I'm sorry," I muttered. Lily looked worried. "Did I do something bad?" "No, sweetheart." God, the fact that she immediately blamed herself told me everything about the environment she'd grown up in. We stopped at a department store along the highway so I could buy a booster seat. Lily picked out a purple one with silver stars. While I installed it in the parking lot, she sat quietly nearby, swinging her legs. Then she asked the question that changed everything. "Do you remember my first mommy?" My hands froze on the buckle strap. "Your first mommy?" She nodded. "Grandma says my first mommy loved me a lot, but she had to leave. Then you adopted me." The air felt suddenly thin. "Did Grandma tell you what happened to her?" "She said my first mommy couldn't take care of me anymore." I tried to keep my voice steady. "What did she look like?" "She had blonde hair like me." Lily smiled faintly. "Grandma showed me pictures." Pictures, not memories. This child didn't actually remember another mother. Someone had created those memories for her, manufactured them. "Did Grandma ever play recordings?" Lily nodded excitedly. "She had songs. My first mommy singing to me when I was a baby." I stared at her. My mother had carefully built an entire false history around this child, one lie at a time. The drive back to Chicago felt surreal. Rain tapped softly against the windshield, while Lily filled the silence with nervous chatter about kindergarten, butterflies she'd painted in class, and a little girl named Emma who could do cartwheels during recess. I barely spoke. My mind was moving too fast. Every detail pointed toward something enormous, calculated, deliberate. My mother hadn't made a careless mistake. She had created a full identity around me and this child. Fake custody paperwork, forged signatures, school records, medical authorizations, 4 years of lies. And somehow, I still didn't know the most important thing. Who was Lily really? About halfway home, we stopped at a rest area so Lily could use the bathroom. While she washed her hands, I stood near the sink watching her reflection in the mirror. Blonde curls, green eyes. Something about her face felt strangely familiar. Not enough to place it, but enough to unsettle me. "Can I call Grandma before bed?" she asked hopefully as we walked back outside. I hesitated before pulling out my phone. "Sure." I dialed my mother again on speaker, straight to voicemail. Lily's face fell immediately. "Is Grandma mad at me?" The question hurt more than it should have. "No, sweetheart, none of this is your fault." Again, that same expression, relief mixed with fear, like she'd spent her whole life believing adults disappeared whenever children disappointed them. We finally reached my apartment a little after 8 o'clock. I lived alone in a small condo near downtown Chicago. Modern furniture, white walls, minimal decorations, no toys, no children's books, no extra bedroom. The moment Lily walked inside, she looked around curiously. "It's really clean here." I almost laughed despite everything. "Yeah, usually it's just me." "Do I live here now?" The question landed like a weight on my chest. I forced myself to stay calm. "Just tonight, okay? Tomorrow we're going to figure things out." I ordered pizza because it was the only thing I could think of that a child would actually eat. While we waited, I made a bed for her on the couch with blankets and extra pillows. She watched me quietly the entire time, like she was trying to decide whether I was safe. That realization nearly broke me. After dinner, I tucked her in on the couch. She looked tiny buried beneath the oversized blanket. Right before closing her eyes, she whispered softly, "Mommy, Natalie?" I froze. "Yeah? Are you gonna keep me?" The fear in her voice destroyed me. I sat down carefully beside her. You are safe here tonight. That's all you need to worry about right now. She studied my face carefully. You look sad. I smiled weakly. Long day. Grandma says you get sad because your sister died. Every muscle in my body locked. My sister? She said that's why you work all the time.
I couldn't breathe for a second. My younger sister, Savannah. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I whispered. My sister died a long time ago. Lily looked genuinely heartbroken for me. That's really sad. After she fell asleep, I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring into darkness for several minutes before finally opening my laptop. I needed answers. Fast. The first thing I searched was obvious. Savannah Mercer obituary. Nothing. I frowned and searched again with different details. Still nothing. That made no sense. My mother had told me Savannah died in a car accident in Northern California back in June 2021. We'd held a memorial service. There had been flowers, photos, mourning cards. I had cried over an empty grave. But now I realized something horrifying. I had never actually seen a death certificate. Not once. My mother had handled everything herself while I drowned in grief. And I had trusted her. I closed my eyes briefly. Then I typed a different search. Savannah Mercer, Chicago. Nothing. Savannah Mercer, Indiana. Nothing. Then finally, Savannah Mercer, Milwaukee. A social media profile appeared instantly. My stomach dropped so hard I nearly became physically sick. There she was. My sister, alive, older, thinner, but alive. The profile photo had been updated less than 3 weeks earlier. I stared at the screen in disbelief. For 5 years, I believed she was dead. 5 years of grief. 5 years of guilt over our last argument. The last time we spoke, Savannah had called me crying. She said she needed help. I'd been overwhelmed with work at the law firm and told her I'd call her back later. I never did. 2 months later, my mother called me sobbing to say Savannah was dead. And now, here she was, alive. 40 minutes away in Milwaukee the entire time. I clicked through every profile I could find: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, private accounts mostly, but recent activity everywhere. My hands shook violently as realization crashed into me. Lily's birthday. I grabbed the school paperwork again. Born March 2021. Savannah had been 19 years old then. Pregnant. Oh my God. I stared toward the couch where Lily slept peacefully beneath a blanket. My mother had lied about Savannah dying, which meant Lily. Lily was Savannah's daughter. The room tilted around me. I stood up too quickly and had to grab the counter to steady myself. No, I whispered into the empty apartment, but deep down I already knew. My mother had stolen that child. Then another terrifying thought hit me. Why create guardianship papers in my name? Why involve me at all? I opened the digital trust account my grandfather had left me years earlier. I was listed as executor. I hadn't checked the account closely in a long time because the investments were professionally managed. The balance appeared on screen. Then my blood ran cold. Hundreds of thousands of dollars missing. I clicked transaction history. September 2021. Withdrawal. Guardian expenses. October 2021. Withdrawal. Dependent care. November 2021. Same thing. Month after month. Year after year. Authorized by Natalie Mercer, legal guardian. I stopped breathing. My mother had used forged custody paperwork to access trust money tied to dependent guardianship clauses. She hadn't only stolen a child, she had stolen my identity. And she'd stolen nearly $700,000 from my grandfather's estate. I sat there frozen, staring at the numbers. My mother had built this entire nightmare around money and control. Then I noticed something else in the trust documents. Funds could only be accessed if I legally assumed guardianship of a child before turning 30. I was 29. The timing wasn't accidental. Every detail had been planned. I immediately emailed the notary whose seal appeared on the forged paperwork. Then I began making a handwritten list because that's what I always did when things became overwhelming. Evidence, fraud timeline, school records, bank withdrawals, proof of forgery, find Savannah, protect Lily. By midnight, my phone buzzed with an email response from the notary. Ms. Mercer, I never notarized these documents. Someone illegally used my seal. I read the sentence 3 times. Then I looked toward the sleeping child on my couch again. Everything became horrifyingly clear. My mother had convinced Savannah I wanted nothing to do with her. She had convinced me Savannah was dead. Then she stole Savannah's daughter and used my identity to fund her fantasy life. I felt physically sick. But beneath the nausea, another emotion slowly began taking over. Rage. Cold, sharp, unforgiving rage. Because this wasn't manipulation anymore. This was destruction. And I was going to tear apart every lie she ever told. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw pieces of my life rearranging themselves into something unrecognizable. My mother crying at Savannah's memorial service. The closed casket she claimed was necessary because the accident had been too traumatic. The sympathy cards, the fake grief, all theater, all lies. At 6 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and went into the kitchen to make coffee. Lily was still curled up on the couch, clutching one of my throw pillows like it was a stuffed animal. In sleep, she looked younger than 5. Smaller, somehow. Innocent. I wondered how many lies she'd already absorbed without understanding them. By 7:30, she wandered into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. "Morning," I said softly. She gave me a sleepy smile. "Morning." I made scrambled eggs and toast because it was the only breakfast I knew how to cook for a child. She sat at the counter, swinging her legs while I cooked. "Is Grandma coming today?" she asked carefully. The question tightened something in my chest. "I don't know yet." "Did she leave because I was bad at school?" I turned around immediately. "No." I said it so firmly she startled slightly. "You did absolutely nothing wrong." She stared down at the counter. "My teacher says grown-ups leave when they get upset." Jesus Christ. I set the plate in front of her gently. "Listen to me, Lily. Adults make their own choices. Kids are never responsible for adult problems. Ever." She nodded slowly like she wanted to believe me, but wasn't fully convinced. At 8:10, my phone rang. Unknown Connecticut number. I answered immediately. "Ms. Mercer, this is Dana Holloway with Child Protective Services." My stomach dropped. Maplewood Academy filed a mandatory report yesterday concerning possible neglect involving Lily Mercer. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course they had. "I understand. We need to schedule a home visit within 48 hours. I took a slow breath. "There's something important you need to know. I believe I'm the victim of identity theft. The guardianship paperwork associated with Lily is fraudulent." Silence. Then carefully. "That's a serious accusation." "I can prove it." I explained the forged documents, the fake signatures, the notary fraud, and my evidence that I'd been out of state when the papers were supposedly signed. Dana listened professionally, but I could hear skepticism underneath her tone. "Until this is officially verified, you are still listed as the child's legal guardian in all active records." "I understand. You will maintain care of Lily while the investigation proceeds. I'll visit Friday morning." After the call ended, I stared at my phone for several long seconds. CPS was investigating me now, because of my mother. Lily looked nervous. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart." "Then why do people keep calling?" I forced a smile. "Because adults are trying to fix a mistake." At 9 o'clock, I called the notary whose seal had been used. His name was Richard Hale. He sounded furious. "I absolutely did not notarize those documents," he said immediately after reviewing the scans I sent overnight. "That stamp was copied illegally. Can you provide a written statement?" "You'll have one within the hour." "Good. One piece at a time." Then I drove to my mother's house. She lived in a wealthy suburb outside Indianapolis in a large colonial-style home she absolutely could not have afforded legitimately. Now I knew why. Her silver Lexus sat in the driveway. But the house looked dead. Curtains closed, no lights, No movement. I pounded on the front door anyway. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. As I walked around toward the backyard fence, an older woman watering flowers nearby looked up. "Oh," she said with surprise, "you must be Natalie." I forced a polite smile. "Yes. I'm Carol Benson. Your mother talks about you constantly." I almost laughed at the irony. "Have you seen her recently?" "Yesterday morning. She left with luggage. Seemed upset." My pulse quickened. "Did she say where she was going?" "She mentioned staying with family in Tennessee for a few days." My mother had no family in Tennessee, not a single relative. "She looked nervous," Carol added quietly. "Honestly, she seemed scared." Good. She should have been scared. After thanking the neighbor, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. My mother knew the truth was unraveling, which meant she could run, destroy evidence, disappear entirely. I immediately drove to the Indianapolis Police Department. That was where I met Detective Marcus Reed, mid-40s, calm eyes, sharp posture, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. I handed him everything: the forged custody papers, school records, trust fund statements, the fake notarization, my conference records proving I'd been in California when documents were supposedly signed, and finally, the social media profile showing my supposedly dead sister alive in Milwaukee. Detective Reed leaned back slowly after reviewing everything. "This is one hell of a case." "I know. How long has this been happening?" "Almost 5 years." He exhaled heavily. "And the child?" "I'm almost certain she's my sister's daughter." "You haven't contacted your sister yet?" "No." "Why not?" I stared at the table. "Because if this is real, then my mother stole 5 years from both of us. I needed to understand exactly what happened before I showed up at Savannah's door." He nodded slowly. "That's smart." Then his expression hardened. "Ms. Mercer, based on what you've shown me, we're potentially looking at identity theft, forgery, fraud, embezzlement, custodial interference, and falsification of legal documents." Hearing it spoken out loud made everything feel terrifyingly real. "What happens now?" "First, we locate your mother. She's running. Probably. Second, we preserve every piece of evidence before it disappears. Third," he looked toward Lily, sitting quietly in the waiting area, coloring with crayons an officer had given her, "we protect the child." Something about the way he said it made my throat tighten, because despite everything, Lily still smiled whenever someone handed her crayons, still trusted people, still believed adults were supposed to keep her safe, and my mother had weaponized that innocence for years. Detective Reed handed me his card. "You're going to need a family attorney and probably a forensic document examiner." "I'm already working on both." He gave a small approving nod. "I figured you would." When we left the station, Lily slipped her hand into mine automatically. "Are the police mad at Grandma?" I crouched beside her carefully. "The police are trying to figure out if Grandma hurt people." Her little face tightened anxiously. "She always said she was protecting us." The words hit me hard. Protecting us. That was exactly how my mother justified everything her entire life. Every lie, every manipulation, every cruel thing she ever did. Always for someone else's own good. By the time we got back to my apartment that evening, I knew what I had to do next. I had to find Savannah. Not tomorrow, not eventually, immediately. Because somewhere only a few hours away, my sister had spent 5 years believing I abandoned her. And somewhere inside her, she probably hated me for it. The thought made me feel physically ill. That night, after Lily fell asleep again on the couch, I opened the old storage box my mother had handed me after Savannah's so-called funeral. Inside were sympathy cards, programs from the memorial, photos, receipts, flowers, every detail carefully crafted to look legitimate. But one thing was missing: the death certificate. My mother had never shown me one because it didn't exist. I sat there staring at Savannah's memorial photo for a long time. I remembered crying over it, begging for forgiveness out loud after everyone left the cemetery, believing I had lost my little sister forever, and the entire time she had been alive, alone, convinced I didn't want her. I wiped tears from my face angrily. Then I picked up my phone and hired a private investigator. Find Savannah Mercer, I said the second he answered. How fast? As fast as humanly possible. The next day crawled by painfully slow. Every hour felt stretched tight with anxiety. I couldn't focus on anything except waiting for my phone to ring. Meanwhile, life inside my apartment had become strangely domestic in a way that felt completely unreal. Lily sat at my kitchen table coloring while cartoons played softly in the background. At one point, she asked if she could help me fold laundry. Nobody had ever asked me that before. I realized with a strange ache that she was trying to earn her place, trying to be useful, trying not to become a burden. My mother had trained her to believe affection was conditional. That realization made me furious all over again. Around noon, Lily wandered into my office while I reviewed documents. Can I ask something? Of course. She hesitated. Did I really used to live with another mommy? I set my papers down slowly. Why are you asking? Because Grandma always said my first mommy loved me, but she couldn't take care of me right. I chose my words carefully. Your grandma told you a lot of things, sweetheart. Were they lies? God. No child should have to ask questions like that. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her. Some of them were. She looked down at the carpet. Then how do I know what's true? The honesty of that question nearly broke me. I walked over and crouched beside her. You know something's true when the people who love you don't make you scared all the time. She stared at me quietly. Then she nodded once like she understood more than a 5-year-old should. At 2:17 p.m., my phone finally rang. Private investigator, Erin Pike. I found her. My heart slammed painfully against my ribs. Where? Milwaukee, East Side neighborhood, apartment registered under Savannah Mercer. She works at a coffee shop called Harbor Bean Cafe. I closed my eyes. Alive. Real. Close enough to drive to. Erin emailed me everything while we spoke: address confirmation, employment records, recent photographs. I opened the first attachment with shaking hands. Savannah stood behind a coffee counter, smiling at a customer. Older, thinner, sadness hiding behind her eyes, but unmistakably my sister. I started crying before I even realized it was happening. 5 years. 5 years stolen. I grabbed my keys immediately. Lily, I called softly, trying to steady my voice. We're going for a drive. Where? To meet someone important. The drive to Milwaukee felt completely different from the drive to Indianapolis. That first drive had been confusion. This one was terror. What if Savannah refused to see me? What if she believed every lie? What if seeing me reopened wounds my mother created? Lily sat quietly in the back seat most of the trip, drawing pictures in a small notebook I'd bought her earlier. At one point, she held one up proudly. It was a picture of me, her, and my mother standing beside a house. Only my mother was drawn far away from us. I nearly had to pull over. We reached Harbor Bean Cafe a little after 4:30. Small place, brick walls, warm lighting. Local college students crowded around laptops near the windows. I parked across the street and sat frozen behind the steering wheel for nearly 30 seconds. Lily looked up. Are you scared? Yes. Why? Because my dead sister was alive inside that building. Because my entire life had been rewritten overnight. Because I didn't know how to survive hearing what my mother had done to us. But instead, I just smiled weakly. Because some important conversations are hard. I gave Lily my phone with a game open on the screen. Stay right here for 1 minute, okay? Okay. I locked the car and crossed the street feeling like my legs barely worked. Then I walked into the cafe. And there she was, behind the counter, hair tied back loosely, green sweatshirt under a dark apron. Older than the girl I remembered, but still Savannah, still my little sister. I stopped moving entirely. She looked up automatically when the bell above the door rang. Our eyes met. The coffee cup slipped from her hands instantly and shattered across the floor. Her face went completely white. No, she whispered. The sound of her voice after 5 years hit me so hard I almost collapsed. Savannah. She backed away from the counter like she'd seen a ghost. You're not supposed to be here. My throat tightened painfully. I thought you were dead. Her expression shattered. What? You were supposed to be dead. The manager rushed out from the back looking alarmed. Savannah, you okay? She never looked away from me. Can I take my break? Uh, yeah, sure. She came around the counter slowly, like she still didn't believe I was real. We walked outside into cold spring air and stood beside the sidewalk in silence for several seconds. Then finally she whispered, Mom told me you hated me. I stared at her. She told me you died. Savannah physically staggered backward. What? She said you died in California in 2021. There was a funeral. Tears filled her eyes instantly. She told me you never wanted to see me again. I felt something inside me crack open. For 5 years, we had both been grieving each other, alive, only hours apart. She said you thought I ruined my life, Savannah whispered shakily. She said you wanted nothing to do with me or my baby. Savannah, I swear to God, none of that is true. She covered her mouth and started crying hard. I called you that spring, she said. I needed help. My chest tightened violently. I know. You never called back. The guilt nearly crushed me. I'm sorry. I thought you abandoned me. I thought you were dead. We both stood there crying on a public sidewalk while traffic moved around us. Then finally, I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Lily is your daughter, isn't she? Savannah's face crumpled completely. Oh my God! She grabbed onto the brick wall beside her like she needed support. Where is she? She's safe. Is she okay? Yes. Tears streamed down Savannah's face uncontrollably. My baby. I swallowed hard. Savannah, what exactly did Mom tell you? She laughed bitterly through tears. What didn't she tell me? Then slowly, piece by piece, the truth came out. After getting pregnant at 19, Savannah moved back home terrified and overwhelmed. Our mother promised to help her temporarily while she got back on her feet. Then everything changed after Lily was born. My mother became controlling, possessive, manipulative. She constantly criticized Savannah's parenting, told her she was unstable, irresponsible, too immature to raise a child. Then one night they had a massive fight. Our mother claimed I agreed Savannah was ruining her future, claimed I wanted her gone. Savannah left the house devastated and moved to Milwaukee to rebuild her life, but she kept calling to ask about Lily, and every single time, my mother lied. She told me you adopted her legally, Savannah whispered. She showed me paperwork with your name. Forged paperwork. She said if I tried to fight it, you'd press abandonment charges against me. My hands curled into fists instantly. She told me I could lose everything if I came back. Oh my God. Savannah wiped tears from her face shakily. I thought Lily was with you. I thought at least she was safe with family. She was with Mom the entire time. Savannah looked physically sick. And Lily thinks you're her mother? I nodded slowly. She thinks you're some mysterious first mommy who disappeared. Savannah broke down completely after hearing that. For several minutes, neither of us could even speak. Then finally she whispered, I missed 5 years. I grabbed her hand immediately. No, Mom stole 5 years. She looked at me with trembling eyes. Can I see her? I nodded. She's in the car. Savannah covered her mouth again and started sobbing harder. My baby. We crossed the street together slowly. Every step felt surreal. I opened the back door carefully. Lily looked up from the phone. Then she looked at Savannah, curious, confused. Something passed across Savannah's face so raw and painful I'll never forget it as long as I live. Hi, Savannah whispered shakily. Lily tilted her head. Do I know you? Savannah almost lost composure completely right there. I knew you when you were very little. Lily studied her carefully. You look like me. Savannah laughed through tears. Yeah, I do. Then Lily said something that shattered all of us. You look like the pictures Grandma used to show me. Savannah closed her eyes and cried silently, because even after 5 years apart, her daughter recognized her instantly. Savannah sat in the back seat beside Lily while I drove us to a nearby ice cream shop. None of us knew what else to do. The entire world had just exploded open, and somehow we still needed to feed a 5-year-old dinner and pretend reality wasn't collapsing around us. Lily chose strawberry ice cream with rainbow sprinkles. Savannah barely touched hers. She couldn't stop staring at Lily. Every tiny movement seemed to matter to her. The way Lily held her spoon, the way she kicked her feet beneath the chair, the little wrinkle in her nose when she laughed, a mother memorizing the child she'd lost, 5 stolen years sitting between them. Lily chatted happily about school, while Savannah listened like oxygen depended on it. At one point, Lily smiled at her and asked, "Why are you crying?" Savannah wiped her eyes quickly. "Because I'm really happy to meet you." Lily accepted that answer immediately. Children were heartbreakingly trusting. Afterward, I drove Savannah back to her apartment. Lily had fallen asleep in the car by then, curled against the window, clutching the little stuffed bear Savannah bought her at the ice cream counter. Savannah looked back at her daughter for a long moment before turning toward me. "What happens now?" "We build a case." I explained everything: the trust fund theft, the forged notarization, the police investigation, CPS involvement, the fraud tied to my identity. Savannah listened silently, growing paler with every sentence. "She stole almost $700,000, she whispered. "Yes." "Using Lily?" "Yes." Savannah shook her head slowly, like she still couldn't fully process the scale of it. "She didn't just take my daughter," she whispered. "She built an entire fake life around her." I nodded. "She wanted control, and she wanted money." Savannah looked devastated. "She used us. She manipulated both of us differently," I said quietly. "She told me you were dead. She told you I hated you." Savannah stared out the windshield. "All these years," she whispered, "I thought you abandoned me. I thought I failed you." Tears slid down her face again. "We lost so much time." I reached across the console and squeezed her hand. "We still have time left." That finally broke her completely. She leaned forward, crying into her hands, while I sat there helplessly wishing I could somehow undo 5 years of damage with a single sentence. Eventually, she looked up again. "What do you need from me?" "Everything." She nodded immediately. "I kept all the messages Mom sent me, every text, every voicemail. I saved the fake custody paperwork because I thought maybe someday I'd fight for Lily." "Good." "I never signed anything voluntarily," she added quickly. "Never." "I know." Savannah swallowed hard. "What's going to happen to Mom?" I thought carefully before answering. "She's facing felony charges." Savannah closed her eyes. Part of her still loved our mother. I understood that because part of me did too, even after everything. That was the cruelest thing about abusive parents. Love didn't disappear just because the truth finally surfaced. Before Savannah got out of the car, she looked back once more at sleeping Lily. "She likes unicorns now?" I smiled faintly. "Apparently." Savannah laughed softly through tears. "When she was a baby, I decorated her nursery with stars." I looked at her. "You remember everything, don't you?" "Every second." The next 3 days blurred together into chaos. Phone calls, lawyers, police interviews, document reviews, CPS meetings. I barely slept. Detective Marcus Reed moved fast. Once Savannah officially gave her statement and handed over years of saved messages from our mother, the case exploded open immediately. The texts alone were horrifying. Our mother constantly manipulated Savannah through guilt and fear. "You're unstable. Natalie doesn't want you around Lily. You'll lose in court. If you come back, you'll destroy her life." There were dozens of them, years of psychological control preserved in black and white. Meanwhile, the forensic document examiner confirmed what we already knew. Every guardianship signature had been forged. Even worse, the notary seal itself had been illegally duplicated. By Friday morning, CPS visited my apartment. Caseworker Dana Holloway spent nearly 2 hours reviewing documents while Lily colored quietly nearby. At the end of the meeting, Dana finally set her folder down and looked at me differently. Not with suspicion anymore, with sympathy. This is one of the worst family fraud cases I've seen, she admitted. I leaned back exhausted. What happens to Lily? Temporary custody remains with you until emergency family court proceedings are completed. But biologically and legally, custody belongs to Savannah. I nodded slowly. I know. Dana glanced toward Lily. She's going to need therapy. We all are. That afternoon, Savannah met with the family attorney I hired, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Evelyn Brooks. After reviewing everything, Evelyn looked genuinely stunned. Your mother orchestrated a 5-year custodial deception scheme while committing financial fraud, she said. I've honestly never seen anything this elaborate. Can we get Lily back legally? We absolutely will. The emergency custody petition was filed immediately. Then came the hardest part, telling Lily the truth. Sunday evening, the three of us sat together in my living room. Lily looked nervous immediately because children always sensed when adults were about to say something serious. Savannah sat beside me trembling. I reached over and squeezed her hand once.
Then Savannah took a shaky breath. Lily, sweetheart, there's something important we need to explain. Lily looked between us. What? Savannah's eyes filled instantly. I'm not just Natalie's friend. Lily frowned. Then who are you? Savannah's voice cracked. I'm your mommy. Silence. Complete silence. Lily blinked several times. Then she looked at me. But you're my mommy. My chest tightened painfully. I moved closer carefully. No, sweetheart. I'm your Aunt Natalie. Confusion spread across Lily's face immediately. No. Savannah quickly pulled out her phone with trembling hands. Look, she whispered softly. She showed Lily photos. Pictures from the hospital the day Lily was born. Savannah holding a newborn wrapped in pink blankets. Tiny nursery photos. Baby pictures. Videos. Lullabies. Proof. Lily stared silently for a very long time. Then finally she whispered, That's me. Yes, Savannah said through tears. And that's you? Yes. Lily looked overwhelmed. Then why didn't you come get me? Savannah broke instantly. I tried, baby. Grandma told me I couldn't. Lily's little face crumpled. Grandma lied? I swallowed hard. Yes. Why? No one answered immediately because there was no answer that could make sense to a 5-year-old child. Finally, I spoke quietly. Sometimes adults make selfish choices that hurt people. Lily started crying softly. Savannah immediately pulled her into her arms. I never stopped loving you, she whispered over and over. Not one single day. Lily cried against her shoulder for several minutes before finally asking the question that mattered most. Can I live with you now? Savannah looked completely shattered by the hope in her voice. Yes, she whispered immediately. If you want to. Lily nodded slowly. Then she looked at me with terrified eyes. Will Aunt Natalie still come see me? I smiled through tears. Every week, I promise. That seemed to calm her more than anything else, because after years of lies and abandonment fears, what Lily needed most was certainty. The following Tuesday, Detective Reed called me before sunrise. We found your mother. I sat upright instantly. Where? A motel outside Nashville. Of course, running, hiding, trying to buy time. She's being extradited back to Indiana. I stared out the window into early morning darkness. How did she react? She asked for an attorney immediately. Good. She was finally afraid. And she should have been. Because for the first time in her life, there was nowhere left to hide from the truth. 2 days later, Savannah and I sat inside an interview room at the Indianapolis Police Department, waiting to face our mother for the first time since everything unraveled. The room felt too cold. Gray walls, metal table, fluorescent lights humming overhead. I kept staring at the empty chair across from us, wondering how a person could destroy her own daughter so completely and still convince herself she was the victim. Savannah sat beside me, twisting a tissue between trembling fingers. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "No." At least she was honest. Neither of us was okay. The door opened a few seconds later. Our mother walked in wearing county jail clothes with her attorney beside her. For a moment, nobody spoke. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. But her eyes were exactly the same, sharp, controlling, calculating. The second she saw Savannah sitting beside me, something flickered across her face. Shock, then anger, then something almost desperate. "You found each other," she whispered. Savannah laughed bitterly. "That's your first sentence?" Our mother sat down slowly. "You girls don't understand what really happened." I almost couldn't believe she was still trying to manipulate the situation. "No," I said coldly. "You don't understand anymore. We know everything." Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Natalie." "No." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "You told me my sister died. You made me mourn her for 5 years." I pointed toward Savannah. "You told her I hated her." Savannah's breathing became uneven beside me. "You took my daughter," she whispered. "You stole her." Our mother's eyes immediately filled with tears. "I was protecting her." "There it is," I muttered. That word again. Protecting. Her favorite excuse for cruelty. "She needed stability," our mother insisted. "You were 19 and reckless." Savannah stared at her in disbelief. "So you took my child?" "You abandoned her." "I left because you manipulated me into believing everyone hated me." Our mother slammed a hand against the table suddenly. "I gave that little girl a good life. You built her entire identity on lies," I snapped back. "She thought I was her mother. She thought Savannah abandoned her. She thought love disappeared when children disappointed adults." Our mother looked away for the first time, and somehow that hurt worse. Because part of her knew exactly what she'd done. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid bank statements across the table. "You also stole $687,000. Her face tightened immediately. "That money belonged to family." "It belonged to Grandpa's trust. And Lily is family." "You forged my identity to access it." Silence. Then finally she whispered something that made my blood run cold. "I deserved that money." The room went completely still. Savannah stared at her like she no longer recognized the woman sitting across from us. Our mother kept talking. "After your father left, after all the sacrifices I made raising you girls alone, I deserved something back." I actually laughed once out of disbelief. "You stole a child because you thought you were owed compensation?" "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it." She opened her mouth, closed it again, because there was no explanation, no version of reality where any of this became reasonable. Detective Reed stepped forward from the wall where he'd been silently observing. "Mrs. Mercer, we've recovered the forged documentation, duplicated notary seals, financial records, and electronic communication connected to this case." Our mother looked exhausted suddenly, defeated. "I never wanted this to happen." Savannah's voice cracked with rage. "You already made it happen." Then came the moment I'll never forget. Savannah leaned forward slowly and asked the one question both of us needed answered. "Why did you tell Natalie I was dead?" Our mother looked at her for a very long time before answering. "Because if she found you, she would have taken you away from me too." The honesty of it stunned the entire room. Even her attorney looked horrified. "You isolated us on purpose," I whispered. "She always loved you more." Our mother snapped suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "She was always going to leave me eventually. You too. Everyone leaves." There it was. The real reason beneath everything else. Fear, control, possession. Our mother hadn't viewed us as daughters. She viewed us as things that belonged to her. And when she felt herself losing control, she destroyed our lives to keep us trapped emotionally around her forever. Savannah started crying quietly beside me. Not loud, dramatic crying. The kind that came from realizing your mother never truly saw you as your own person. Detective Reed finally spoke again.
Linda Mercer, you are being formally charged with identity theft, first-degree fraud, forgery, custodial interference, financial exploitation, and criminal impersonation.
As he read her rights, our mother looked directly at me. I did love Lily. I stared back at her coldly. You loved controlling her. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. For the first time in my life, my mother looked powerless. And honestly, that terrified me almost as much as everything else, because people like her were never supposed to lose control. As officers escorted her toward the door, she suddenly stopped and looked back at Savannah. She was happy with me. Savannah stood slowly. No, she whispered. She was surviving you. The door closed behind our mother. Silence filled the room afterward. Savannah sat back down and covered her face. I wrapped my arms around her immediately. For several minutes, we just sat there holding on to each other like survivors after a storm, because that's exactly what we were. The plea agreement happened faster than expected. Once prosecutors uncovered the full financial fraud trail and the forged custody scheme, the evidence became overwhelming. Our mother accepted a deal rather than risk trial. 8 years in prison, 5 years probation afterward. Full financial restitution ordered against remaining assets. Permanent restraining orders involving Savannah and Lily. I expected to feel victorious after hearing the sentence. Instead, I just felt tired, deeply tired, like grief had settled into my bones permanently. By May, emergency custody officially transferred to Savannah. Watching the judge finalize it nearly made me cry. Savannah squeezed my hand so tightly during the hearing, my fingers hurt afterward. Lily sat between us, clutching a stuffed unicorn, while the adults discussed legal terminology she couldn't possibly understand. But she understood one thing clearly: her mother was staying. Afterward, Savannah found a small 2-bedroom apartment outside Chicago, only 15 minutes from mine. Close enough for Lily to keep seeing me constantly. That part mattered more than I expected. The transition wasn't easy. Lily had nightmares. Sometimes she woke up crying because she thought Savannah would disappear too. Sometimes she asked whether prison meant Grandma stopped loving her. Those questions were the hardest, because despite everything, Lily still loved my mother. Children almost always loved the people who hurt them. Savannah handled it with incredible patience. I'm here, she reminded Lily constantly. I'm not leaving again. Therapy helped slowly, for all 3 of us. Savannah and Lily attended together twice a week. I started individual counseling after realizing I couldn't keep functioning like everything was fine. Because it wasn't fine. I had lost 5 years with my sister. Savannah had lost 5 years with her daughter. And Lily had lost the chance to grow up knowing who she truly was from the beginning. Some damage never fully disappears, but healing still happens anyway. One warm Saturday afternoon in early May, we went to a park near the lake. Lily ran toward the swings laughing while Savannah and I walked behind her carrying coffee cups. For a moment, everything looked normal. Just sisters at a park with a child. Sunlight filtered through trees. Kids shouted in the distance. Dogs barked near the walking path. Real life continuing forward. Lily climbed onto a swing and called out loudly, "Mommy, Aunt Nat, push me higher." Savannah looked at me with tears already forming. "She calls you Aunt Nat now," she whispered. I smiled softly. "Yeah, thank you. You never have to thank me for finding you, but I do." She stopped walking and grabbed my hand. "If you hadn't come to that school," I already knew how the sentence ended. If I hadn't answered the phone, if I'd ignored the call, if I trusted my mother one more time, everything would have stayed buried. Lily laughed loudly as Savannah pushed her swing higher. "Look how high I'm going." "I see you, baby," Savannah called back. I stood there watching them together beneath bright spring sunlight and realized something important. My mother spent years trying to build a fake family through lies, manipulation, and control. But real family couldn't be forced. Real family was truth, showing up, protecting each other, choosing each other, even after unimaginable pain. Savannah got her daughter back. Lily got her real mother back. And I got my sister back from the dead. That mattered more than the stolen money ever could. Because in the end, the truth destroyed everything fake, and what survived afterward was finally real. Sometimes the people who break you aren't strangers. Sometimes they're the people who raised you, the people you trusted most, the people who looked you in the eyes while destroying your life one lie at a time. For 5 years, I mourned a sister who was still alive. For 5 years, a little girl grew up believing her mother abandoned her. And for 5 years, one woman controlled all of us through fear, guilt, and manipulation. But the truth has a way of surviving, no matter how deeply it's buried, no matter how carefully the lies are built. The truth waits, and when it finally comes out, it changes everything. We lost years we can never get back. We carry scars that may never fully heal. But in the end, love found its way back to us, stronger than the lies that tried to destroy it. Savannah got her daughter back. Lily finally learned who truly loved her. And I learned that real family isn't built on control, fear, or manipulation. It's built on honesty, on showing up, on refusing to give up on the people you love. If this story touched you in any way, remember this. Never let someone else define your worth. Never let fear silence the truth. And never underestimate how powerful it is when broken people choose to heal together instead of falling apart alone.